Hi, I'm Jeff Blackman, and my press, Horsebroke, produces a mostly monthly zine called These Days. It began in March of this year, a week or so after everything shut down. The first issue came out of conversations with my friend and lifelong collaborator Justin Millian of Peterborough. He was doing curbside readings for at-risk people, and I felt I needed to do something to connect with people as well. Like a million people, the pun quarantine occurred to me. I began very small, but I'm lucky to live next to some incredible artists, including Ben Ledesser, Scott Lemoyne, Jen Hazara, and Cameron Anstey. My partner Kate Maxfield is a photographer, and our young son is a budding artist and poet in his own right. The focus was on the new reality, like Cameron described it in his poem Two Walks. We walk together the downtown streets with only the sounds of our footsteps. The second issue coincided with the release of Animal Crossing and the Jewish holiday of Passover. I'm very proud of this cover. I'd sent the first issue to friends and family in Ottawa, Montreal, and GTA, and got a lot of stuff in return. Despite distances, I was able to pair things together, like photographs Kate took of our downtown Ottawa neighborhood, and poems by suburbanite Mark Sokolowski and Montrealer J.M. Francheteau. Tanya Dakari, who Kate and I worked with on the Moose and Pussy years ago, provided the cover for the third issue, and I'm happy to say we did her proud on the content. Tons more stuff came in. I was most excited by the poems and art I received from award-winning poet Snea Madhavan Rees, her husband John, and their 3 daughters. Also with this issue, I began interviewing workers from a reading series that had to go online, beginning with the Tree reading series, which moved both its reading and workshops to Zoom. Then there were protests and marches and riots across the world as the killing of George Floyd brought people out of their homes. I felt a need to contribute to those in need, so put a call out for folks to write about charities and causes they'd supported or benefited from and would like others to know about. I received a great response, including from family and friends who weren't writers or artists, or from those who were but had difficulty knowing what to contribute. We wound up with a catalog, but also an important caveat. Jen Baker and Zashad Locke, both workers from the nonprofit sector, contributed an article about systemic issues they'd observed. On the lighter side, my mom and son wrote collaborative poetry via FaceTime, and then my son and I filled the whole issue with color. Issue 5 was an autopilot miracle. Produced in the carefree days when case loads were low, I, without asking, wound up with an entire issue all about motherhood. Ksenia Spacek wrote poems about pregnancy, Ellen Woodward wrote a poem for her mother's 60th birthday, my dear friend Pete Gibbon wrote for his wife's late grandmother, and my mom wrote about new routines to stay in touch with us. It was an altogether touching issue. I got a few copies still available. The most recent issue is the most Ottawa-centric. I interviewed Verse Fest administrator Avonlea Fotheringham about moving Ottawa's International Poetry Festival online. Our old friend Vanessa Davies reflected on finding a dead man in Dundonald Park, not far from her home. And the whole issue was filled with Kate's photography of the Lower Town and Centertown neighborhoods in Ottawa where we've lived together. Making these magazines has kept me connected to the people in my life and with those who I'd lost touch with. I think also it's connected all the contributors and readers, many of whom knew each other, if only tangentially, through my family and I. I don't know if you could call it a community per se, but it's my community, and I'm very thankful for it these days.